The thick, hot air of Havenwood clung to Deren like a wet shirt as he rode his motorcycle on the twisty forest path. His headlights cut through the dark night, but they only made a tiny tunnel of light. The tall trees on both sides looked like spooky skeletons reaching up to the sky. Deren squinted, a feeling of worry growing in his stomach like a bad seed. Gillen, his best friend since they were kids, rode behind him. Gillen was in his own vibe. Deren had tried to ignore the feeling of unease all day, thinking it was just because of their fight earlier that week. But the worry kept growing bigger the deeper they rode into the forest for their weekend camping trip. They finally reached a clearing, a small forgotten campsite with tall sal trees around it. Gillen, always the happy one, was already taking out his things. Deren, feeling more and more scared, put up their tent. As he was doing this, his hand brushed against something sharp, and it hurt a lot. He looked at the cut. It was deep and clean. It must have been a hidden branch. Night fell, and the forest turned into a black hole with only the firelight to see by. Gillen had somehow gotten a bottle of strong local alcohol, and his laughter sounded strange in the quiet night. Deren took a drink, and the burning liquid made him feel warm inside. But the worry wouldn't go away. Deren had to go to the bathroom, so he went deeper into the woods. As he unzipped his pants, a twig snapped behind him. Deren spun around, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum. But there was nothing there, only the endless darkness and the sound of leaves rustling. When Deren got back to the campsite, Gillen was hunched over the fire, holding a long, scary knife that glittered in the flames, and said, "Hey, Deren," Gillen slurred, his voice thick. "Remember when we were kids, and we would play jokes on each other?" A cold dread filled Deren's stomach. All those pranks and dares they used to do, they had always seemed a little dangerous, a little too close to being real danger. But Gillen had always been there to catch him, and the scary closeness of it had been their secret fun. "Yeah," Deren croaked, his voice barely a whisper. Gillen's smile lit up by the fire. "This," he said in a low, creepy voice, "is the ultimate prank." Terror exploded in Deren's chest. The cut that seemed to happen before by accident, being out in the middle of nowhere, Gillen's weird behavior, it all made horrible sense now. Deren stumbled back, gasping for breath. Gillen lunged at him, the knife a blur in the firelight. Deren jumped to the side, and the blade flew past his ear. A shot of energy surged through him like a burst of lightning. He ran, the bushes scratching at his clothes, the blood-curdling laughter of his so-called best friend echoing behind him. The forest, once a comforting place, was now a maze of scary shadows. Deren ran through the bushes, his lungs burning, his legs screaming in protest. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent shivers down his spine. He didn't know how long he ran, but finally his legs gave way. He collapsed on the ground, gasping for air, his heart hammering against his ribs. Tears streamed down his face, a mix of terror and betrayal. A twig snapped again, sending another wave of terror through him. He squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for the final blow. But instead, there was silence. An awful, tense silence. He dared to open his eyes. Gillen was gone. Had he given up? Or was this part of the horrible trick? The silence pressed down on him, heavy and scary. Deren knew he couldn't stay there. He forced himself to stand up, his body aching all over. He stumbled back towards the faint glow of the dying fire, the only hope in the dark night. When he came out of the trees, he froze. The campsite was empty. The fire had died down to cold ashes. Gillen was gone. But was the nightmare truly over? Or had the horrible trick just begun? The silence stretched on, heavy and scary. Deren's heart thumped like a drum in his chest, the quiet making him even more nervous. Then a twig snapped, sending a shot of terror through him. He spun around, his eyes searching the darkness like crazy. There, coming out of the shadows, was Gillen. A creepy smile stretched across his face, the moonlight shining off the hunting knife he held up high. Deren froze, stuck in a web of fear and feeling like he'd been tricked. Gillen lunged. Deren threw his arm up to block the blow, but it wasn't fast enough. A sharp pain shot through his shoulder as the blade dug in. He yelled, a loud sound that disappeared into the night. But the stab wound wasn't bad enough to kill him. Gillen pulled out the knife, his smile getting even wider and looking really messed up compared to their happy times as kids. He held out the knife, the moonlight showing the red blood on it, and Gillen said in a low, scary voice, "Now it's your turn, Deren. Next time you find me, stab me with it. We have to keep playing this game. Remember, it started when we were kids, just fooling around back then. But the excitement, it likes blood now, don't you think?" Deren stared at him, his vision blurry from the pain and shock. Gillen chuckled, a dark sound that bounced through the trees. Gillen tells to Deren, "This isn't over, my friend. Find me. Take this knife and finish the game." With that, Gillen turned and disappeared back into the darkness, his laughter a chilling echo in the night. Deren slumped against a tree, the weight of the knife feeling cold and awful in his hand. Was this a way to escape, or a horrible new part of their deadly game? He didn't know, but one thing was clear. Their childhood friendship was now messed up with blood, and the difference between playing and killing was gone forever. The forest, once a place of happy memories, was now a hunting ground, and Deren, hurt and betrayed, was the animal being hunted.